Hello and welcome to the Old Man Orange Podcast. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes, bringing you another Old Man Orange Presents Via VHS episode. One of them from the rarities vault that we have from back in the day that just never got put out. So come join us for another fun-filled retro movie review. Let's jump on in.
So welcome to another episode of the Via VHS Retro Movie Podcast. I'm your host, Wesley. And back here with Spencer again. We are talking a very interesting film. Something I hadn't even heard of until Spencer told me about it. And I'm glad you did. Very, very interesting flick. It's directed by Penelope Spheris, who directed Wayne's World. I guess that's what she's most known for. Well,
that's what I always say of her as Wayne's World. But the other thing that always stood out to me is she made all those like documentaries in like the 80s called like the End of the Western Civilization, Part 1, Part 2, and then there's a nice one, Part 3. True. But the Part 2 one was the heavy metal one, so that was the one that always stuck out to me, where it had like Aerosmith and Ozzy Osbourne in there, and, you know, of course, Kiss. And it's got like one of the best ones of Kiss, because Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley are in it. It's like the way that they want to be is Gene Simmons is in like a lingerie store as he's giving like interview, and then Paul Stanley's just laying back on this bed. And I mean, he gives you some of the best quotes out of anybody in the entire world could give you. But he's just laying on this bed, and there's just like 4 or 5 girls just around him. He's just like talking just as calm as could be. And then he'll cut to like a, you know, like Faster Pussycat, be like, "You guys make any money?" "No, we haven't made any money yet." Back to Gene Simmons. Paul Stanley.
Man, I have a love-hate relationship with Kiss. I really do. I don't know why. I like them. I think I like them as a persona, but I don't really like many Kiss songs. But that's neither here nor there.
You just got to get deeper into Kiss. That's mostly how it is. The more time you kind of spend, then you realize how amazing that band is.
Well, we still have to watch that one movie real quick. We have to watch that movie with Tom Selleck and Gene Simmons in it.
Oh, we definitely got to watch that one.
What was the name of it? I can't remember the name.
I don't know, but it's written and directed by Michael Crichton. That really sent me over the edge. Like, oh my gosh.
We got Tom Selleck, Gene Simmons, and Michael Crichton walk into a bar, and this movie is what happens.
I almost got really excited because at first I saw there was a kid in there named Joey Kramer. I'm like, dude, it's got Joey Kramer from Aerosmith in there? Like, probably nobody else is that excited about it. And I'm like, oh, it's just some kid with the same name. Well, that's not great.
I would have been. I love Aerosmith. I would have been really excited about that. Really, really excited. But the movie we are talking about is Suburbia. It was in 1983. It was released. So Roger Corman produced film. Penelope Spheris, as we mentioned. A lot of no-name actors. The only actor that you'll know in here, speaking of rock music and all that kind of stuff, it seems like kind of surrounds Penelope Spheris, is a Flea, who is in it, who is a baby. He's so young. I think this came out the same year that the Red Hot Chili Peppers formed.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken.
This movie's made proto Red Hot Chili Peppers in a sense. By the time it came out, I think they would have been kind of together with that first album or close to that time period. But that's where I kind of like. I remember I've heard about this movie before in the past, but I kind of like I was reading or like listening to like the audiobook of like Flea's newest one when he reads it to you, and it's just like a proto before Red Hot Chili Peppers kind of story. And then this came up in it, and I was like, oh, Suburbia. I'm like, oh, I do remember. I'm like, dude, we got to check this out. I'm like, Flea's star, or he didn't star in it, but he's in it. I'm sold. Penelope Spheris, come on, Wayne's World. She actually does a bunch of really good movies, but like, you know, still at the end of the day, there's tons of stuff there.
Yeah. Which Wayne's World makes total sense for her to do. And like I said, I'm really glad you mentioned this to me. If you're listening to this episode, like right when it first comes out, as of now, it's still on Amazon Prime. So if you've never seen Suburbia, you can go check it out. I definitely recommend doing so. I guess we'll get into our thoughts on it. But this film is, the first few minutes almost lost me.
Dude, okay. that is the ultimate, you know, like, I love when movies have I always call it like the, are you in or are you out? I sort of got that from Bobcat Goldthwait. And it's just the thing. You start your movie off in the first 5 minutes, you just have something really hardcore in there. And that's kind of like the thing. It's like, if you can handle this, the rest of the movie will be fine.
I don't know. There was some hardcore shit in this movie that really just, it was difficult for me. But so first of all, before we even get to what happens, so this movie is like very low budget, very indie. Doesn't change the fact that it's really good. Doesn't use real actors though. Like pretty much everybody is real punk rockers or like punk kids or whatever. She wanted to feel genuine. Sometimes that's a benefit to the film.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's a detriment to the film. It depends on what's going on at the time. Overall, it worked, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
But the opening, when you're immediately thrown to this movie, there's no like title screens or anything. It's like I was watching Amazon, and just to give you an idea, it was like a trailer for the new Hannah show that Amazon's got coming out. So you have your obligatory Amazon commercial, and then you're in the movie. There was no like, this was made by so-and-so Productions of Penelope Spears film. None of that shit.
Yep, just a girl hitchhiking on the road.
Yeah. What the hell? It was weird. I was like, is this it's the movie. What the hell?
Like, I don't even know if there was a fade in. I almost just felt like it was just a hard cut movie starts.
I rewatched it because I had to, but I wasn't really able to devote my attention to it the first time I watched it like I wanted to, except for the first 20 minutes I could, but after that it was kind of weird. But I rewatched it, and there was kind of a small fade in. So because I was watching for it the second time, I'm like, okay, so it's a little more subtle than I want to imagine, but really it's not subtle at all. It's just like, oh, there's a movie.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, oh, hey, well, here we are.
So we're not going to go over the entire plot, but I think we should go over the beginning, because I was like, what the hell did Spencer get me into?
Well, these are those things, like, you never know what you're getting into. I just saw, like, oh, Flea's movie about punk rock? Let's watch it. That was all I needed.
Yeah, this was an uninformed decision. You know, I didn't even look up the tomato score before I watched this, which is something I just do. I shouldn't do it, but I do. It turns out it has like a really high score. It's like a 92%, which makes sense after watching it. But I really went into this very blind. So, but yeah, the opening scene, there's this girl hitchhiking. This lady kind of happily picks her up, and they have like a flat tire, right? Yeah,
like a blowout or something. They're like, oh, there's a payphone down the street, down this dark LA, highway. Let's go walk down there.
Yeah, let's just walk over there. Nothing could happen. And the girl, the hitchhiker, is holding on to the lady's kid because she's like, hey, I just met this girl. She's hitchhiking on the interstate. I should let her watch my child while I make a phone call.
Yeah.
And the kid gets attacked by Doberman.
There's literally these wild dogs that are running, and they explain it later in the movie. That's like there's these like half-bred like dog coyotes that just run the streets of Los Angeles. And I want to say this is totally like a real thing, because that's the thing. Since she's like a documentary filmmaker, it kind of most of the stuff I gotta assume all came from real events and so on. But I feel like I've heard the dog thing before back in the day, and this dog just runs up. The only part that makes it kind of funny though is it's kind of sad because the kid gets like murdered by this dog, but like when it shows the dog shaking the kid, it's just like this dummy.
It's definitely a baby
dog. It's a dummy. It's like the dog just going to town. It's like, Arr!
It looked like one of those little buddy dolls or whatever.
Yeah, it's like that. Those are always those things where it's like don't get me wrong, like I love a dummy. I'll take that over like CG right there. But like I couldn't help but laugh once I saw the dog just go to town on that like doll.
Dude, I don't know. I think a CG version of this would actually be pretty funny also.
Especially with CG like 84.
Yeah. Oh my. Yeah.
They're like, well, what'd you spend your budget on? We got this CG kid getting shaken by a dog.
Like the whole movie looks dark and gritty and like kind of like shot on, a camcorder, and then this one scene looks like Dire Straits, Money for Nothing. There's this kid shaking around. Yeah, I don't know, but the weird thing about that opening scene is really jarring, especially when you have a 1-year-old. And you're like, oh shit, that's the thing.
You're like, I'm not going to Los Angeles, not using the telephone.
I just got back from Los Angeles with my 1-year-old.
Like, you get a blowout, and like the wife gets out of the car, like, no, we're gonna wait here. Nope, not going.
Not going anywhere. It's weird. I went just real quick off topic, and we'll get back on real quick. But we hadn't really traveled with my son that much. When my father-in-law sent us to Disneyland because he wanted to meet my son.
Well, good thing I didn't send you this movie and you're watching it over on the plane ride.
Thank God. Yeah, because Los Angeles was jarring enough. We were literally there when the COVID, that day when COVID, like as you're listening to this, we're still kind of in the middle of all that. But remember that one day when COVID like really hit the fan?
Like the ground
Tom
zero
Hanks
day?
got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like Tom Hanks got it, and then like 2 hours later, NBA was canceled, and I was like, "Oh shit, it's real." And the next day when we got off the plane, everything had been canceled. Like everything was done.
Yeah, it was just like locked down. It was almost kind of like not as tragic, I guess, but it was like almost like the day after 9/11. Just like there was just instant like, oh shit, things are gonna like really change all of a sudden.
We went to Disneyland like the next to last day it was open.
Yeah.
Yeah,
not
really
knowing
weird.
anything else. I remember like I had a friend, speaking of Kiss, he went to one of those like, it was like on the last Kiss tour, he's seen Kiss like 2 or 3 times. He literally has tickets to the very, very last Kiss show, front row, that is still on, but I bet you anything it might get canceled now. But I remember like the last time he went to see it, it was like, he saw a Kiss show and then like 2 days later, no more concerts.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm not worried till this thing gets Keith Richards. If it gets Keith Richards, then I'm scared.
Well, Keith Richards, that's a movie in itself. He is the Cure.
It might be, dude. I could do a whole podcast episode on how I feel about Keith Richards. He is literally. I love the Rolling Stones. He's my hero. Anyway, so yeah, this kid gets mauled by this Doberman Pinscher to get us back on track. And the weird thing is about this, so it's loosely connected to the plot, but it's not like none of these characters you see at the very opening scene are like main characters. They're not. It's just loosely related. All it really does is set up the dogs.
The hitchhiker girl she shows up to the house. She's one of the main characters because she's the one who's like.
Oh, she's the girl that gets her hair cut?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that was her.
Yeah, well, because she's got the long hair and she's almost kind of, I guess you could say, kind of preppy looking. And then, of course, she showed up to the punk rocker house and, everything changed. Yeah, so that's where the connection comes.
That's right. Yeah, you're right. She was that. Okay, I remember that now.
And I want to say her name was Sheila because all I could think of was like the Ramones song. It's like, oh, Sheila is a punk rocker now.
Sheila is. I'll bet that's why that was her name.
I bet you do.
Yeah, very on the nose. So that's the opening scene, and then you kind of like after that, it's just everything in this movie is so it's a very, very punk movie. It's like this is almost like a punk, really almost 2 hour long punk song. Really, It's like rejected people. Mom kicked me out of the house, told me to do this. I'm standing up to authority. All this stuff. It's really, really like that, and I mean. I was actually pretty invested in this from the beginning. Yeah,
you get really into it because it's like, really for the most part, it's kind of like a hangout movie of a bunch of these punk rock kids living in abandoned houses, like in Los Angeles, and of course then there's like the dogs running in the streets, just kind of like it's almost like the sign of like there's just danger that lurks out there, and it almost like kind of exists in almost these dogs. It's weird because it's like you think of another movie that'd be like right before this, which is almost like. John Carpenter's Assault on Precinct 13. It's like in Los Angeles too, but it's like the dogs almost feel kind of like the gang members that just like continuously just like roam like the streets. But in this one, it's just like there's these dogs, and it's just like you just gotta sort of be careful. You don't go out and just get in between these dogs now that they just happen to be out there and what have you.
Yeah, it's really weird. It's so I mean basically you're introduced to this house. This romanticized version of punk rock, which it shows the, troubling side of everything that they're doing too. It definitely delves into that. But a kid named Eric and his mom is an alcoholic. They get into a fight. He's got a younger brother, and he leaves home, and he ends up with these punk rock. He goes into a punk concert, meets some punk rockers, and they are TR. They're the Rejects. That's their name, and he ends up meeting this group of people, and they take him in, and they make him becomes one of their little family. And the film just kind of follows them along, and it's almost like a merry band of pirates, and it really is romanticized because you mentioned it's a hangout movie. You kind of want to hang out with them when you're watching it. Yeah.
Though it also reminds me. I don't know if you ever read. Did you ever read The Dirt by Motley Crue?
Mm-mm.
Because that house is like, there's a house that they had like pretty much right before everything in Motley Crue kind of happens and so on. It was called the Motley House, and it was in Los Angeles. Now this was definitely, I think, more in town where this punk rock movie's on the outskirts. But they had a house that was just one of those ones where it was run down. There was cockroaches running around, spray paint on the walls. It was dirty. It was filthy. I remember they even talk about there was like trash pile that was in the backyard that, like, the neighbors would complain about, because I think they were still in normal, like, there's still, like, neighbors and so on, where this place in Suburbia, they're definitely, like, in, like, an abandoned area where it almost looks like houses that were built, like, in, like, the 30s and 40s, and they were probably really cool, but maybe about in the 60s, somebody gave them up, and then they just started bordering up, and that was the end of this project, and it's done. Because, you know, just by looking at the architect and look at the style in it. But it really reminded me of, like, that Motley Crue, where it's like there's just this really nasty, destroyed, funky house that almost, it's romanticized almost in a sense where it's like, oh, that could be kind of cool. But then you kind of go, oh, that'd be so gross. Like, think about it. Like, the other day, you're like, no way. Like, I'll go get a job and have a nice house or a nicer apartment. Exactly. Like, you know, that to me would make me work pretty quick by just being in there for about a day or so.
Yeah, I think so, too. Like, it would be... like hanging out at night, not having to worry about a job, you know, having the campfire at the end of the night, and everybody's just talking and hanging out and stuff, and
the mysterious free electricity.
Yeah.
I was like, where's this electricity and water kind of coming from? You know, at the end of the day,
I feel like they slightly mentioned that at some point. I feel like they did. And just to kind of clarify where they're at in this, so it's like, and this was a real neighborhood that was eventually torn down to build the same speed of the freeway that was in the movie Speed.
Yeah.
And which is funny. And so they were tearing down this neighborhood on the other side of the 605, and this is where they live. And they all just kind of live in this weird dystopian Mad Max kind of neighborhood where the rest of LA is, you know, whatever. And there's wild dogs and all kinds of crazy stuff. And they're not well received by the rest of the public.
No, well, what I like about this movie is like there's almost like, I guess you would say, then there's like the conflict. Is there these guys that are called like the citizens, like against like crime or whatever. And this is my favorite part. This is the part that I was like really my take home from this movie more than anything else. Was this? There's a scene in there more than anything. I was like, what the heck? Like, and obviously it must come from something kind of real. But there's these two guys, and it's like called like Bob and Bill. And I kid you not, they look like Bob and Tom from this like these radio hosts from like Los Angeles area. That
I wanted them.
Yeah, I was like, I just kept thinking like, there's Bob and Tom coming again. I mean, even the one guy's got the LA hat with the big old mustache. Looks just like him. And they come rolling in through the neighborhood, like Wild West style, and they're like firing rifles out their pickup truck, just shooting these wild dogs that are just running down the street and whatnot. They're just blasting away. Like, God knows whose dogs these are, really. For all you know, it could be just some neighbor's dog got let out today. And the police pull up, and they're like, Bob and Bill, or whatever your guys' names are, like, what are you boys doing? You can't just be going around shooting guns at wild dogs in the street. Yeah, but you know, somebody's got to take... I know, somebody's got to take care of them, you know. But you see, that's the police job, and you know, you boys just get back home and get back to what you're doing. Like, could you just imagine driving around Los Angeles just firing guns off as like, you know, a normal like citizen, and being like, the police come by and just give you the old like, get back home. What are you guys doing? We'll get around to it once we do.
The 80s. Yeah.
It was so calm.
You know, also you're torn in this film, at least I was. Because so the cop that you mostly follow around, I think his name was Clarence or something. Doesn't matter what his name is. I almost
want to say his name was even something simpler. Like Clarence even sounds like... I almost want to say his name was actually Bill.
Yeah, maybe it was. But either way, this guy is like... he's kind of like the main cop you see throughout the movie. He's a stepfather of one of the kids that's one of the rejects. He's like actually almost the leader of the rejects. Yeah. He knows what's going on in that house to an extent. He knows that these kids are overall innocent. Some of them are doing some bad stuff.
He owns a car.
He owns the car that they're driving around, like stealing food from people's garages and all that stuff. He owns that car. So you understand where he's coming from, where he doesn't want to prosecute these kids and go after them because he knows that they're good kids, and he's trying to protect them from Bob and Tom, who wants to shoot them, just hunt them down like nothing. But then at the same time, like, dude, you also are being really ineffective at your job. Like, that was you really do also kind of suck at this.
Well, that's the thing. He's like that police officer he's too nice. That's the problem.
Yeah.
He wants to be like as Andy Griffith as possible, but even Andy Griffith would lay down the law here. You know what I mean? Like I feel
Sheriff Andy Taylor ain't messing around.
Yeah, he would clean that up in seconds. You know what I mean? But it's that kind of weird thing where it's like, yeah, it's like he wants to be good. He's got that sort of connection to these kids. You know what I mean? It's weird. He's got like this connection. He's like, this black police officer connected to like the whitest fucking like punk rock kids imaginable.
Yeah. It's a very interesting scenario, the way that they play this out. And first of all, the political incorrect, like this movie is like super liberal and then almost like super far right conservative at the same time, because they say things that are like, whoa, like even triggers my PC. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh wow, you just called that guy that, and you said this, and like, he's black, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, it is early '80s too. It's like you sort of forget, like,
oh yeah,
that
it's 40 years ago almost.
Yeah, but and then it's like the other thing too is because then you have like sort of the Bob and Tom guys running around. And, you could say, like, from a perspective, some people could look at those guys and be like, oh, man, those guys are the enemy. They're the guys that got jobs and, make a family for themselves and so on and work a yard sale, blah, 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 blah. But at the same time, like, the punk rock kids, though you're supposed to kind of let them, like, they are kind of jackasses. Like, they literally don't want to work. They are robbing people that do works home, just going into their garages, stealing, out of the freezer, causing a ruckus, hassling the poor guy at the convenience store. Like, at the same time, I kind of get it. Like, when the Bob and Tom guys throw this community meeting together, and they're like, yo, we got to do something about that. Bill over here ain't doing anything, so here's the thing. Citizens need to stand up and take care of this problem. And I'm kind of like, I'm torn back and forth because I'm like, I see totally where they're coming from. You know what I mean? Like, I totally get it. I mean, like, you like the punk rock kids, but at the end of the day, they're probably more wild than those dogs out there.
Yeah, there's that, and it's like I feel like there's kind of like an anti-Reagan sentiment going on in this movie, like some of the little subtle things that shit said, like the bumper stickers you see and all that. And I get where they're coming from, because it's like, on one hand, they have been they're rejects, and they have been rejected. They have been rejected by society. Parents kind of rejected them. They've been thrown out by other places. And so when you feel for them, because at one point in time, the cop goes to their house to try to talk some sense into them, tell those youngins what's up. As they tell him, like, listen, we don't have any place to go. We've been in foster homes. That sucks eggs, as one kid says. And so you're like, okay, well, you see the real issue here. It was like, you see both sides of the argument. And so I like that about the movie. But at the same time, like, okay, I get you guys are, living in Peter Pan land, but you don't have to be assholes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be such dicks.
Yeah, it's like, you guys watch so much TV. How about you take a little of that time and you go out and get a job now it just sounds like Uncle Reagan showing up at the house. Okay, cats.
Well, Nancy and I were saying the other day that you need to get out there and pull up your bootstraps and that whole thing. But
yeah, exactly.
It's a real conflict there, but I think it's a well-written story in that aspect, where you kind of like, you're watching it and you're like, oh, guys, don't do that dumb shit. Please, like, just live in your little utopia and don't bother anybody, and everybody else will leave you alone. But then at the same time, you see that they are rejected. You see why they're doing some of the things they're doing. And it's like both sides, I feel like, are right in some way, and then Bob and Tom and the kids also take it too far. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where it's at. It's like there needs to be some resolve and some understanding, and there's just not any.
Yeah, and I think it is a good just balance between all these characters that, like, you feel for them, but you also kind of go, like, everybody is a little bit in the wrong also at the same time too, whether it be the police officer can't take care of it, whether it be Bob and Tom guys go a little too far, whether it be the punk rock kids just should, like, if you get a good balance in it and you clean up the act a little bit, you can still keep the punk rockness, but just, get a nice job. There's this Nicky Six boy over here. He's making phone calls for telemarketers. Just kind of things like that. And but at the same time, I just feel like it is just kind of like there just is this group of people, because like even Flea itself, like you read those books of like those, that time period of like everybody kind of hanging out, and that's what the people did. It's just like the parents just didn't really care, and then these kids would just go out wandering Los Angeles, like just find something fun and stupid to do, you know. And I think that's kind of what this movie sort of represents, is just kids. Because here's the thing: that most of the kids there, they're all like between ages probably 15 and maybe like 18. You know, like the kid with the car is probably the oldest one, and he's like, you know, would be a graduate of high school, and that's about as far as it is. But you know,
yeah,
that's so at that age, it's like, if kids with nothing to do, not going to school, not having a job, you know what I mean, all this stuff, like, of course you're going to get into weird stuff, and you're also going to kind of, like, do things that aren't good, and you're going to steal and just do dumb stuff, because that's just kind of, like, what would be bound to happen. It's like, I remember even in Flea's book, he talked about a story where him and Anthony Kiedis, when they were kids, they just got to the point where they would just find pools, and they'd go jump off the roof into them. And they kind of like, well, we thought we became kind of experts. And so there's one pool where it had just like a micro landing in it and whatnot. So he's like, I jumped, landed in, it was perfect. And then as I popped up, I heard this weird thud sound. And I looked, I was like, oh, look at Anthony, he didn't make it or whatnot. And he was like, oh shit, he fell on his back and like broke his back because he hit the concrete. Just like one of those ones. And there's that thing where it's like, hey, there was like another friend there, and they're like, hey, could you stay here with him? Because I don't want the police to find me, so I'm going to run on off.
Yeah.
Just like one of those kind of moments, just like, God, that like right there. But you know, all kids, there's always those kids out there that do those kind of stupid things. That's where I always feel video games is always a great one, because video games, I've always said this, when people kind of complain about like, oh, kids are just playing video games all day long, or they're just down in the basement playing, I'm like, here's the thing. If they're down there playing video games, you know they're inside and they're safe. If they're not down there playing video games, they're out in the world doing God knows what. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Those kids, what's the worst they're going to do? Cyberbully somebody now?
Yeah.
I mean, like, yeah, it's true. I mean, there is a good point about that. These kids definitely could have used to like an Atari or, Atari at that time. There's no NES yet. So I don't know. It's kind of stressful, this whole movie. So there's also the punk rock element. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of, I guess, semi-famous bands. I'm sure if you're a punk enthusiast, you know who these bands are. I mean, obviously Flea's in it. He's from the Hot Chili Peppers, but they're not in the movie.
they're not even a band yet.
No, they're not even a band yet. They're probably a band like about the same time this was released. But it's they got about 3 or 4 times in this movie. There's a different concert, and they like really focus on the music. So it's kind of like, you can see the MTV influence in this a little bit. Mm-hmm. But other than that, it's really just basically following these kids at their house, and then there's a lot of different little subplots with pretty much each character. And then Eric's brother, the kid you meet at the very beginning, like I said, his brother ends up over there, and they basically shit. I got ahead of myself. Now I can't remember where I was going.
Going somewhere with the brother. He was getting there. He was
yeah. Shit. Now where was it? Yeah, the brother. And then you have Eric's brother, who's basically there, and he just kind of he really doesn't participate in any of the mess. He's the innocence in the story. There's really 2 people. There's Sheila, and there's I can't remember Eric's brother's name, but the kid on the big wheeler that's playing all the time. Those are the 2 representations of kind of like innocence. Like they're really the bystanders in this, and they're the ones who really suffer the most consequences in the film, which is really, really sad. Yeah,
those ones definitely do. Well, because there's that one kid that I can't remember if it's the kid that does drugs or whatnot, but there's like, it's one of those things that like would not, like this day and age you would have seen that and it would not be that big deal, but they have that thing where it's like, oh dude, his dad is gay and like he's got his lover over. It's like, oh dude, he comes from like such a broken, messed up home, which like you look at that like nowadays it would have been like, well, what's the big deal? You know what I mean? Exactly. But this movie they treat it like oh man, dude, his life's really messed up. It's just like, I don't know.
His dad's gay.
Yeah, his dad just looks like he's a happy-go-lucky. And the dad seems so nice, too. It's always like one of those ones like, hey, Bill, what you doing? Me and my buds are hanging out here at the pool. You want to come hang out? No, Dad. Don't want to be with you and your gay lover. And it's just like, what are you doing? Like, he had a great house. That was just like one of those ones where it's just like, that's the reason why he's got to go join the punk rock guys, because my dad's gay, so I just can't handle it.
I have to go. They're doing gay things over there, and I just want to watch Magnum PI, and I like.
But then I look on over, and then it's pretty much it's Magnum PI in my own house. Everyone's got a big old mustache, and it looks like they all like lift weights and swim in the pool all day long.
I mean, I would have hung out with those guys.
That family looked great. I don't know what was going on there. It's like, I just think that was just so funny, because that was a perfect example of, like, at that time period in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, that would have been looked upon as like, oh, he isn't a broken family. But that was like equivalent of like the dad just sitting there shooting up heroin and like passing out just like every day. Like they treated it like it was that bad. Like it was like, oh, that would have just been, a Tuesday nowadays.
Guys, you pariah. Get out of here, you leper. Yeah, it's just, man, it's crazy how far we've come in a few years. And I'm surprised they even played this movie the way things are going right now. Like, everybody's so sensitive about everything. But, hey, Amazon Prime, thanks, man. It's on there. So, yeah, basically, the movie is about, and I won't give away the ending because you have to see the end of this movie, but it's kind of a culmination of all these elements, the Bob and Tom characters, the rejects, and everything kind of coming to a head. And there's all these subplots about, the rejects are, the rejected is framed for like a murder that happens in the club and all kinds of stuff like that. But I really think this movie kind of flows well. The things that didn't work, two things. Like I said before, having non-actors in it, sometimes it's great because it felt really authentic and like you're listening in on these conversations that were really happening. But then sometimes it was just, it was almost as painful as the dirt bike kid.
Well, they all have that like punk rocker kind of like, or like almost like that mixed match, because like I would just see it kind of growing up like either punk rocker guys or grunge rock people or like Marilyn Manson type kind of like industrial music. They have that, we all kind of talk in a monotone like this, man.
What are you doing, man? Like, you're taking my stuff, man.
And I noticed like a lot of the guys would talk like really slow. And I'm thinking that's more kind of normal, but like they would just be talking like this, and it's my house, man, and I don't want the police. Like, geez, speed it up, boy. Come on, get some East Coast influence in here.
Yeah, especially the one guy, I can't remember his name, but he's like the really tall, big, buff guy who's always getting into fights, He's actually probably my favorite character.
Of the shaved head and everything.
Yeah, Skinner was his name, what they called him. He was like, he talked so slow. And it reminded me of, I don't know if you've seen this Saturday Night Live skit, The Californians.
I don't know if I have. Is it a newer one or is it an older one?
It's kind of like semi-new. It's got Kristen Wiig in it, and Fred Armisen.
Because I used to watch so much Saturday Night Live and like with all the 80s and 90s episodes and so on, but I've never really seen tons of the newer stuff.
Dude, you have to watch this because my wife's from California too, so she thinks it's hilarious. And there's like this whole thing where it's a soap opera, but they talk really Californian, and that's what this movie reminded me of, because it'd be like, "Stuart, what are you doing here, man?" And then they're always giving directions. We took the 405 over to Sunset, and I did. It's like everything's directions because they're in California. But it's actually pretty funny. But that's what the whole time it just kept flashing back to that skit on Saturday Night Live, because some of them really, really did talk like that. It's just like it kind of can be nails on a chalkboard a little bit, but you forgive it because it's really natural too,
Yeah, I know. Well, it's funny because it's like that voice almost comes from like definitely like far west and down south. Because where I'm sort of at, like everybody, like the common accent a lot of times is almost, I always say it's kind of that rural kind of almost like a southern accent. Like that's what a lot of people seem to kind of have. And I think that's why a lot of times I always realize it's not a southern accent. It's just more like sometimes it could be like a rural mountain, like woodsy, forest, like all that kind of stuff. Sort of all kind of kinders to that accent.
Yeah, it's really weird. The whole cadence and everything is weird about it. But overall, this movie was fun. I really enjoyed it. And I'll tell you what movie it really reminded me of. It not just because the content mattered, but it just the way you get attached to some of these characters and you root for them, but you also like wish they would straighten their asses up. It kind of reminded me of Trainspotting a little bit.
Oh, it definitely felt very Trainspotting. Like that, I could see Trainspotting being influenced by this because of this movie.
Absolutely. Yeah. I definitely can too. And Trainspotting is one of my favorite movies of the 90s. I absolutely love it. I didn't love this film as much as Trainspotting, but I definitely feel like, oh my God, what's his name?
Ewan McGregor?
No, the director. He's done.
Oh, Boyle. Danny Boyle.
Yeah. Danny Boyle. Yeah, thank you so much. I definitely feel like he saw this film at some point in time, and I definitely feel like it really fit in with Trainspotting, because even Trainspotting has that punk aspect a little bit. I mean, Iggy Pop came out and did the song for it, so.
Well, that one's definitely very British, like punk '80s kind of like.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Because Trainspotting takes place in the '80s too, right?
I think it does.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen that movie. I mean, I don't really like it. I own that one and the second one, but
yeah, I think it takes place in like the late '80s.
Yeah, as I say, it was a period piece. It wasn't like '98. It was like '88, '6, because it has oh god, there's a couple '80s songs in there, like those kind of like neo pop, like techno songs.
Mm-hmm. That was a popular soundtrack.
Yeah,
and I think soundtrack. I think this movie, I haven't checked it yet, but I've been meaning to go on Spotify to see if there's like a playlist from this movie, because I feel like there is.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's definitely got to be one.
Because, this movie's got like that like hardcore, like you really got to be in the know of like these punk rock bands to know what's going on in Suburbia. But, you know.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like, I was going to say this real quick. You know what other movie it kind of reminds me of? I mean, this is kind of definitely different, but Singles. Kind of had that, because Singles was like, that definitely had people that were, you know, not like bums or like living off stuff, but like, because that one had those like scenes of all like the grunge rock bands in like the early 80s or the late 80s with like Soundgarden and Alice in Chains and Eddie Vedder's in it and what have you. And I remember because Chris Cornell's in it for like a moment. I was like, what? Not just like on stage, like he's got a scene.
Oh my God.
Well, if you've never seen that movie's amazing. Singles.
Maybe that's what we should look at.
It's from Cameron Crowe, the guy who did Jerry Maguire and everything. And
God, yeah, I love Cameron Crowe.
Oh, Singles is probably my favorite one out of all his, and I love Cameron Crowe stuff.
Damn, yeah, that's a big deal right there, actually, because I like a lot of this stuff too. This film is definitely, I definitely recommend it. The music, actually, I don't listen to punk music. It's just not my thing. Like, I listen to classic rock, listen to a lot of bluegrass and blues and stuff, but I actually like the music in this, especially I think it was the second man, the guy in the leather jacket that looked like Punk Elvis.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I actually really like that. So I think there's a lot to enjoy for everybody. So, a big thumbs up from me.
Yeah, I thought it was great the whole way through. It's a good story. What I like about it is I just like these kind of movies that sort of takes you back to a time, and it's just like, hey, you're going to kind of live in this moment for a bit and kind of see like how it kind of went down. And I do like how it's very balanced between like all the characters. I think that's one of the best parts of it, because this movie could have been one of those preachy movies, been like, no, the punk rock guys are all right, you know, and so on, and like you got to listen to them, and you know, Bob and Tom over there, that's the man who got a job, and look at them, they're like out like shooting dogs, like what are they, crazy? But I like how it really makes you see the sides of everybody kind of around it, and you kind of get it. Like you kind of feel for everybody in it, and you don't feel like anyone gets like more like kind of like, I guess you would say, play than anyone else. Like everything's kind of equal grounds, and the argument's pretty well dispersed. And I think that's kind of the cool thing about it. You know, it doesn't make you try to lean hard in one direction or the other. It's like you kind of get it, and at the end of the day, you're like, yeah, there's just a problem here, and somebody's, you know, maybe you guys just all got to work together to solve it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this, you know, even though you're kind of introduced to one kid at the beginning, and he's your introduction to the rejected, even the rejected themselves have, you know, they all have an arc. I mean, they all have a story going on, except for maybe those two weird girls that were kind of annoying that had to comment on everything.
Yeah, I think that's all. They're supposed to be just the commentary characters.
Oh God, they were horrible. I think that might be the thing I hated about the movie, because the whole chicken butt scene.
Oh yeah.
Like, oh my God.
Well, when I thought about that, I just saw King of the Hill when I saw that, where like Buckley's like dead and he's like on the trampoline outside.
Guess what?
Yeah, chicken butt. Oh, Buckley. He's just like, oh, that dang old Buckley kid again.
Oh, that's pretty good. I didn't even know that existed that long ago. I didn't know that was like an 80s thing, but I guess it was.
Yeah, well, it made me really wonder when I was watching that. I'm like, that wouldn't be out of the question, for him to kind of see, once again, Suburbia, and then throwing that into King of the Hill, Mike Judge.
Oh, yeah.
You never know. Because I feel like Mike Judge is kind of in that, like, he likes all that kind of weird, obscure kind of music and so on, too. Even though he looks like such a serious, straight guy, He made Beavis and Butthead, go figure.
Oh, yeah. I can see Beavis and Butthead being inspired by this movie. Almost. So, yeah, that's actually a really good point. This is definitely an underground classic. I'd never heard of it. If you're going to watch it, I'm glad you listened to the review, because I'm going to say this. We mentioned the opening scene. I think a lot of that's going to be a turn off for a lot of people. Because not only is it just like weird and just kind of like really aggressive, the way it throws you into it, but it's also probably the worst setup scene in the film. I feel like you could watch Penelope Spheres become a better filmmaker through the movie. Like, it just seems like it progressed better and was shot and like put together better towards the end of it. But overall, big thumbs up. Definitely recommend The Departed. Where the fuck did that come from?
It's like, after this whole long spiel of it, you know what? I just want to give Leo some props here for The Departed.
You know what? Scorsese. That's my takeaway from this movie. It's Scorsese. No, I definitely recommend Suburbia. Any last thoughts on Suburbia?
Overall, I thought it was so awesome. I like kind of like almost like the rough cut kind of feel to it. Just like, it's hardcore, just going into these guys' lives, sort of seeing like the twists and turns kind of unfold, dark stuff happens, but it's almost that kind of like bittersweet. There's a lot of bittersweet in it and so on.
Yeah, you're right.
And then even I'm not going to say the ending, but the ending has that classic, like what I love about, like I call them 70s endings, where it's like, we hit the ending, we're done, roll credits. And I love that. I'm personally a big fan of like, your movie's over, roll credits, not like 3 or 4 more continuous endings afterwards.
Yeah, it definitely did that. Very Chinatown.
Yeah.
Very Chinatown. So anyway, so thanks for listening to our review. If you're listening to this recently after it's released, it's still on Amazon Prime. If not, you can probably find it somewhere. I definitely recommend looking it up. Great, really a time capsule for everything that this film is representing. Really just a time capsule in general of the 80s. So look it up for that. But let us know what you think about it and give us your opinion on Suburbia. You can find us at Via VHS on Twitter at Via VHS. So you can find me on Instagram at Via VHS Pod. A lot of new stuff coming out, new podcasts coming out, Nostalgia Cast. We're still figuring out the bells and whistles on it, but it's just going to be a pop culture time capsule podcast kind of situation. And obviously you just released more Pizza Boys, right?
Yeah, more Pizza Boys. So issue 10, probably when this episode's up, will be on Amazon and hopefully pretty soon on Comixology. That always takes a little bit of time. But Pizza Boys issue 10. I call it the heroine of video games.
Oh, my God.
It can almost sort of tie into the Suburbia, but in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, it works out good. Well, great. I'm glad. Definitely check out Pizza Boys if you haven't. Go on there and do the thing and check out Pizza Boys. And like we always said before, Spencer's a Renaissance man, so he's everywhere. You're doing everything.
Anything and everything.
And so, well, that's it. Thanks for listening. Check us out on all these great places. Listen for more content. And with that, Via VHS is out.